Hello and welcome to Live with Jesse and Melva. You know, um, these weekly series, they're so important to me and to Jesse too, because we have so much um, information to share. And we figured with all these years of all the personal and professional and spiritual work that we've done, we've accumulated a lot of knowledge and to apply in our own relationship, to apply in our profession, um, to apply in our day-to-day relationships. I mean, the people at the store, almost said the cleaners, but we haven't been to the cleaners in years, um, because we know the value of everyday relationships. And so this series, even though we're focusing on love relationships and marriage, the tools the ideas that we share with you are ideas that have worked for us, that we share with clients and that we are very excited to share with you because we know the value of being aware of how to bring the best of who you are to every situation in life. We also know some kind of way life will challenge us to make sure that we're on track. And so that is why we focus on challenges as an opportunity for growth, to tap inside, deep inside, to see that gold that is within us that is trying to express. And so this uh, this series that we're doing about secrets to lasting love, um, it has so many different components. And we thought that the best way to present it to you is to introduce a story of a couple that we call James and Marion. So it's not any particular client um, or even family member that we know of. It's a composite of the theme of what we have seen in relationships and the themes of what we have discovered that keep people stuck. Because, sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. And when a person operates with only what they know how to do, especially in a relationship situation where they become reactive, they don't know that they're sabotaging themselves. And so we want to introduce a little bit of that to you today with secret number 2 for lasting love. And so let's look at last time. We introduced the couple, our composite couple, called James and Marion, and shared with you how their date nights would turn into argue nights. Now, this couple, if you're just joining us for the first time, this couple has been married 2 decades. They have 2 grown children. One is married with 2 children, and the other is a senior in college. And so they were looking forward to their golden years. And this is what we have learned about what happens when teenagers turn into adults and then they move away from home. That couples think now we're going to have this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful life. And they can. And a lot of it is really good and rich. What happens many times is the unfinished business, things that were not addressed during the time that the children were home, bubble up when the adult children are gone. And so that's what happened to James and Marion. Um, and they now this is they really love each other and they're struggling and they don't understand why they keep getting stuck at the same place over and over again. Why is it that they keep arguing all the time? And so they took the first step last time in making a decision to change. They did a pro and con list, pro of what was really working in the relationship and cons what was not working. And the pros outweighed the cons by far. And so they both decided that they wanted to have a change, that they wanted to make a change. And so that was the first secret. The second secret is for James and Marion, and they already did the work, so we're sharing their story, is for James and Marion to understand who and what needs to change. So the who is easy. They both need to change. They need to change the way that they see the situation so that they can get to the root of the problem. We call it mining for gold, peeling back all the layers of what that wedge is between them. It's important for them to discover that there's a wedge within them as well. And before they can change it, it's real important that they understand it and become acquainted with it without judgment. So there is a way to turned their um, date night that turned into argue night to argue night that turns into date night, what they really want to change, what they really want to experience. And so, one thing, so here's the first thing, or actually the second thing, and the second secret for them in terms of change. And that is, it's important for them to understand their psychology. And what I mean by that is that when people are stuck in arguments, in the same old argument over and over and over again, um, there's something bigger going on, and it is unconscious. So the psychology that is important for them to understand is the unfinished business that both of them brought into the marriage over 25 years ago. That was never addressed. Now, well, they went to counseling a couple of times, so they know a little bit about it, but they stopped going because they thought that they had it nailed down. It didn't occur to them that since they were stuck again, to go back and get some help. Well, actually, they did, and so in understanding their psychology, that's still operating within them, and also in the background of their interactions with each other. So the psychology of the brain that I'm referring to, the psychology that I'm referring to them relates to a very specific part of the brain that is operating. It's a primitive part of the brain. It's the root part of the brain back here. And it operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doing its job. And what is his job? His job is to scan the environment. So the environment of the relationship, environment of their interactions, to determine what is safe and what is threat. What is a threat? So when they're feeling safe, meaning feeling connected and close and what have you, they have a wonderful time. They have a wonderful time. And since this unfinished business has been identified, the least little thing can set them off. Now, what they discovered when they peeled back the layers operating beneath the surface of their arguments is that not only was that primitive part of the brain scanning, it was well, the two things that I mentioned were scanning for emotional safety and scanning for danger. So they discovered that when they were arguing, there was a part of their being that sensed a sense of danger. And actually, it was because when people are arguing, there is a threat to the connection because people are not feeling so good with each other. Right. They're so annoyed with each other, and it's hard to want to embrace each other when people are in that state. Now, I will tell you, there are, because they don't know any better about how to get to this stage without the pain of staying stuck in arguments. There's some couples that say, well, sometimes we have a rough time, but we enjoy makeup sex. Well, how come you can have enjoyment and have sex and enjoy it, and it doesn't have to be makeup sex? But if you don't know what's going on, then that's what you're going to do. Right? So, so here's the thing. That part of the brain that's running the show has the consciousness of a 7-year-old. It has a 7-year-old emotional mindset, and it has a 7-year-old emotional skill set. So, the mindset is operates on emotions. They're either mad or they're sad or they're happy or they're scared. So those are the only emotions, and they get flooded. That 7-year-old gets flooded with those emotions, and when they're flooded with those emotions, then that influences how they react. They're not proactive. They don't have a plan because you're going to get triggered in your life, not just with your spouse or your loved one. People can push your button any place. So anyway, so the skill set that goes with those flooded feelings, that's the fight flee reaction. Fight, flee, freeze, play dead, hide, or submit. And we often say if a person gets to a place where they submit and they submit under the umbrella of being reactive, it's going to be hell to pay for the person that they're upset with, because the person probably thinks that um, they won the war. But if a person is submitting in those kind of situations, it gets worse.
And Melva, and all of those of you who are listening, the unfortunate thing is that most people aren't really sure about why they're being triggered.
Mhm.
There's something, and the unfortunate thing too is they get triggered over and over and over again on the same things, but they have not taken the time or don't have the wherewithal to be able to figure out on their own, why am I being triggered over this particular issue? What's the root to that? What can I do differently so, as you were saying a moment ago, we can just go ahead on and have a wonderful sex without having to do all that the prelude. You know the stuff before. You don't have to do all that other
Oh, foreplay.
foreplay. Yeah, you don't have to do. Don't have to. You don't have to make that your foreplay. And once you figured out why you're being triggered, uh, and you understand that, what that means is you don't have to do that as often anymore.
Yeah, you can get to the pleasure
Get to the
much
pleasure
faster.
and push and get past the pain.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, the part I would call it sad. The sad part is when people don't know what they don't know that they don't know, and they keep operating on their assumption of what is true, operating on the surface, the tip of the iceberg. The painful part to watch or to hear about is a decision that um, the person or the couple, when invited, refused to go deeper to find out the bigger picture, because people get stuck in right and wrong, good or bad, finger pointing, criticizing, judging, all that kind of stuff. And it makes things worse. And when that's all you know, that's all you're going to do. And I can't tell you the number of times that, and you've experienced it too, in our professional life and our personal life, where people are having a hard time together. It could be family members, it could be siblings, it could be parent child situations, along with love relationships, that the person who is the most upset refuse to see their contribution
Right.
to the upset.
Right.
Because when a person pushes your button, that's an invitation to become reactive.
Mm-hmm.
You can RSVP in your mind and decide that you're going to get triggered by somebody in some kind of way. Your RSVP for yourself is that I'm not going to accept the invitation. I'm just not going to accept it. I'm going to take a look inside and see what's going on within. So that's what happens. That's why we're encouraging getting to know the 7-year-old inside, because when James and Marion, now, when they first started off, and a lot of people do this, I think we did that a little bit too. Um, and that is, instead of looking for the 7-year-old within, the focus began looking at the 7-year-old and the other person and talking about how awful that 7-year-old was kind of thing. That made things worse. You can't do, Marion and James could not do the other person's inventory. They had to do their own inventory, which is secret number 2. Secret number 2 is to find out that about that 7-year-old. Because what you want to do, I mean, it's been doing its job since it was 7 years old. So it has more seniority than the logical part of you that developed when you were 23 to 24 to 25. It has a whole lot more seniority. That means it has a lot more power. And so it's so important not to judge that part. It's important to get to know that part, to understand its role, and to have compassion for the role because it's doing its job. And to come up with ways that you can give that 7-year-old a new job. Because if the 7-year-old is running how you function in the relationship, it's like giving your keys to a 7-year-old child and allowing them to drive your brand new car. Now, how many of us would do that? Well, actually, I saw, I don't know if it was on the news or something like that, well, I saw 2 different things. No, I think this was the same one. A 10-year-old got the keys, and I don't even know how they could reach the gas pedal. I think it was his father's truck, and he was just driving all over the place. Didn't know what the heck he was doing. And thank God, I think he ran into something, and I think that's how the truck stopped. And actually, that's what happens in relationships too sometimes with that 7-year-old. That when that 7-year-old runs rampant around everything, it causes a lot of chaos. That's why arguments become so intense sometimes.
Yeah.
Because both people are out of control. So it's important to know why, what is going on beneath the surface. So we recommend getting to know your 7-year-old. So here's what James and Marion did. That's what I was going to tell you before I went off on a tangent. Here's what James and Marion did. They did decide to take their own inventory. And so they gave themselves a week to journal every time they got triggered. And what they journaled was what they were feeling, what they were thinking, and they were mostly, the first impulse was the negative thinking they had about the other person. And we encouraged them to also journal what it was they were thinking about themselves. Because many times the negative self-talk has a lot to do with, and this needs monitoring, has a lot to do with how powerless a person feels, how unworthy a person feels about having something better, how a person settles for being in a negative situation over and over again. So they journaled both, how they were thinking. And then they added to the journal how they reacted, whether it was the fight, leave, free, whatever it was. Because as they, day after day, as they journal, they seemed to get triggered about stuff every single day when they were doing the exercise. And what they discovered was, yes, they were being reactive. So they were very clear. They became very clear about how they contributed to the nightmare. I remember when I'm trying to remember who had this concept that I really like, and that is when communication breaks down, both people contribute to the nightmare.
Right.
When communication is built up and people connect, both people are contributing to the dream. And so that is James and Marion's goal as they continue to navigate this course toward healing and growing in this particular area that they don't know what it is yet. Because when they heal and grow in this area, then they are going to tap into more qualities that they have within.
You know, and I'm thinking as you're talking that since it is unconscious things that trigger these outbursts and so on, that while it's only the two of them have created this nightmare, and only the two of them can provide a mutually satisfying solution.
It's true.
So you're not going to find it outside yourself. You can try all kinds of stuff. You can go to the mall and spend all the money you have today, tomorrow, next month. And it may make you feel good for a minute, but it still doesn't solve the basic problem. You still got to come back to yourself and to address the issue about the real question is, how am I contributing to this nightmare?
Right.
And what is it I need to do my part in correcting it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes courage to look within.
Oh yeah.
Without judgment.
Oh yeah, because it's far better. We think, many of us think, it can't be. I can't be participating in this in any way. Look what a wonderful person I am. Who would not want to be with me and give me all the things I want? But in reality, you are contributing in some way to the nightmare. And it's your responsibility to figure out what that is and change it.
And there's a way to do it with compassion.
Yep.
So that's the step that James and Marion took. That's the second secret. They did their personal inventory. They did just 1 week. They gave themselves 1 week to just be aware of what's going on. Because when they saw a theme through the 7 days in terms of the feelings and the thoughts and the actions. And actually there's really more layers than that are beneath the surface. But we wanted them to start, I don't want to call it start small, but this process requires baby steps, because if you try to do too much at the same time, you get overwhelmed. The 7-year-old gets overwhelmed, and then you just go into reaction mode. So they took that step, and they were glad that they did in terms of what they learned about themselves. They have more to learn, but they're on target with this particular step. So that's the second secret. Okay, so it's your turn. So our question to you is, do you know the 7-year-old that lives within you? Do you know that part of you that's running the show, that has a limited view, has tunnel vision just on survival? And in that frame, the way that part of you shows up sabotages any kind of closeness and connection that you would want to have, because it operates on a 7-year-old level consciousness. So if you don't know that 7-year-old, we invite you to go within and do some exploring with curiosity. Would you be willing to journal? Because we're going to share the third secret next time. Would you be willing to just journal for just 1 week? Situations in which anything that triggers you. It could be something tiny. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with your spouse, but especially with your spouse or the person that you're in a love relationship with. Be sure to jot those down. But if somebody else triggers you in another situation and your spouse didn't, or your mate didn't, journal that and what your experience was with that. And then at the end of the week, review what you wrote, because that is the 7-year-old within you trying to support you at a 7-year-old consciousness. And here's the ground rule: no judgment. It's important to be in a no judgment zone. Because sometimes, when you take a look, when you take a peek, sometimes it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's your personal inventory. Nobody has to know.
And it's so freeing. Once you uncover these hidden characteristics and all about your inner child, and you to figure out why it is that you are responding and reacting the way that you do, you're talking about lifting a huge bit of unpleasantness off your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be so grateful and appreciative of the fact that you did that. And yes, it does take courage, it does take time. But I will say to you, we will say with you, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
It's all worth it. So come on in and join the rest of us.
Right. If you would like support in getting started, we're still offering free telephone consultations to support you to have a jump start. Just go to jesseandmelva.com/consultations, and first name and email address. We'll set up a time to talk. So for the individual ones, we usually encourage joining as a couple. But I think for this particular step, individually. So if you need a jump start individually, let us know. We'll be happy to support you. And thank you once again for joining live with Jesse and Melva. We are looking forward to next time. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or you can ask a question in the jesseandmelva.com consultation, or I think it's placed a question there. Or if you're in our Facebook group, is free. Tips for Jesse and Melva. No, tips for success in love and marriage. So the people who are already in the group, feel free to ask questions. We'll be happy to support you. Till next time, take care.
Watch Live with Jesse and Melva right here on Solivity TV every Sunday at 5:30 Eastern. Solivity Magazine brings you the best in inspiration on Solivity TV. Check out our new shows. Mark your calendars for Solivity Magazine shows by going to solivity.com now.